All right, so we are continuing our story with Hank the Cowdog today. We're going to be reading chapters 4 and 5. In our previous chapter, Grover thought that there was a monster and had Hank running towards the monster, which turned out to be a milk cow. So he's not too happy with Grover at this point. So in this chapter, they're going to be going into town and they're going to meet a boxer. And they might not make the nicest choices, but they do work well together as a team. I slept in late the next morning. To be real honest about it, I didn't wake up until sometime in the early afternoon. I guess all that monster fighting was kind of wore me down. What woke me up was the sound of a flatbed pickup rattling with a gas tank right in front of my bedroom. Lopper got out and started filling up the pickup. He looked out at me and he gave his head a shake. And he said something under his breath. I tried to read his lips, but I couldn't make out what he said. Probably wasn't the Pledge of Allegiance. Slim went around to the front of the pickup and he opened the hood. I was just getting out right in the middle of a nice stretch when I heard him say, "Hank, come here, boy." Jeez, a friendly voice at last. How long had it been since someone spoken to me in such a kind voice? In my job, nobody ever says a word when you do something right. They only say something when you make a mistake, and then you hear plenty about it. I trotted over to the front of the pickup. I limped, actually, because I was pretty stove up from that battle. Wagged my tail and said howdy. Slim bent down and rubbed behind my ears. Good dog. Good dog? Oh, I just melted at those words. I rolled up and kicked up all four legs in the air. You ever seen a dog do that? It's amazing what a few kind words and a smile can do for a dog. Even as hard-boiled as I am, which is something you have to be in my line of work, I respond to kindness. Slim rubbed me in that special place at the bottom of my ribs and the one that's hooked up to my back leg. I never understood the mechanics of it, but if a guy scratches me there, it makes my back leg start kicking. Slim scratched me and I kicked. It felt good and made old Slim laugh. And then he told me to sit, and I sat and I tried to shake hands. Shaking hands is one of the many tricks I've learned over the years, and I can usually count on it to delight an audience of people. But Slim didn't notice. He reached under the hood, pulled out the dipstick, and wiped it off on my ear. It's like the whale sick part. And that was it. I waited around for some more scratching or handshaking, but he seemed to forget that I was there. Slammed the hood and stepped on my paw. Oops, sorry, Hank. Get out of the way. The sweet moments in this life are fleeting. You have to enjoy them to the fullest when they come, before some noodle steps on you and tells you to get out of the way. Slim and Loper got into the pickup, and Loper said, "Don't you dogs try to follow us." He gunned the motor and pulled away from the gas tank. Grover suddenly appeared out of nowhere and hopped up onto the back of the pickup. "Come on, Hank, we were supposed to go." In the back of my mind, I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't have time to think about it. I chased the pickup until it slowed down for the big hill in front of the house, and I jumped up on the back. Is he supposed to be in the truck? Do you remember from the story? We'll see what happens. "Where are we going?" I asked. Grover gave me that famous empty-headed look of his, the one where you gaze into his eyes and see all the way to the end of his tail, and there's nothing in between. Beats me. I bet we're going somewhere. Loper drove to the mailbox and turned left. If he had turned right, it would have meant we were going to the pasture. A left turn meant that only one thing. we were going to town. And that meant one thing. Loper was going to be mad as thunder when he found out we jumped in the back and hitched a ride. But what the heck? You can't be safe and cautious all the time. If you're too timid in this life, you'll miss out on all the fun and adventure, and you'll just stay home and snap at the flies. And when you get to be an old dog, you look back on your life and you think, all these years I've been on this earth and I've never done anything but snap flies. And you'll regret that. When the opportunity came, you didn't sneak up a ride. Rover curled up behind the cab and watched as the scenery went by. I sat on my hunches and I closed my eyes and just let the wind flap my ears around. You ever seen a dog do that? Dogs like riding cars usually. Felt good, felt restful. There for a little while I forgot my cares and responsibilities. That lasted until we got to the highway. Loper pulled onto the backstop and started picking up speed, and the wind began to sting and flap my ears. Flap a little harder than I like 'em to flap, and the crumbs of the alfalfa hay on the pickup bed started to swirl. I lay down beside Rover. Say, before I forget, I want to thank you for all the help you gave me last night with that monster. He gave me a shy grin. Oh, it's okay. It's the least I could do. Sure as heck was. If you'd done any, Lister, you'd have been fighting for the other side. The shy grin disappeared. You're mad about something? Forget it. I didn't want to talk. Alfalfa leaves were getting in my mouth. Slept all the way to town. Next thing I knew, we had slowed down and we were coasting down the main street. And I sat up and I took in the sights. A bunch of stores and street lights and several stop signs, a couple of town dogs loafing around, and a big tumbleweed rolling down the middle of the street. Loper drove into the parking place in front of the Waterhole Cafe, beside 2 or 3 other pickups that looked like cowboy rigs. When he got out and he saw us back there, he gave us a tongue lashing I expected. It was no worse than usual. Not bad enough to make me regret that we hitched a ride to town. He told us to sit down and be good and don't bark. Then he and Slim went in the Waterhole, the restaurant, like a pub. For 5 or 10 minutes, we concentrated on being good, which was a real drag. And then I heard Rover go, psst. Said, pick up the park next to us. In the back, fast asleep, was a big, ugly boxer dog. We both moved to the side of the pickup bed and stared at him. He must have felt our eyes, because after a bit, his head came up and he glowered at us with his wicked expression on his face. What are you staring at? Just looking at the sights, I said. What's your name? Puddin' Tam. Ask me again, I'll tell you the same. I guess Rover didn't understand what that meant. So he asked, what's your name? John Brown. Ask me again, I'll knock you down. Rover gave him a puzzled look. I said, how come they got you chained up? He was tied to the headache racks of the pickup with a piece of chain. So I won't kill any dogs. You kill dogs? No fooling? Said Rover. Just for drill. I prefer bigger stuff. That sort of ended the conversation. Puddin' Tam went back to sleep, and I got involved with a couple of nosy flies who were bothering my ears. Took a few snaps at them, but I didn't get anything. Next thing I knew, Rover said, what would you do if I peed on your tires? Boxer's head came up real slow, and he turned around around with his wicked eyes looking at Drover. What did you say? I said, what would you do if we peed on your tires? Drover made me uneasy, the way he was talking about we. The boxer sat up. I'd tear off your legs and I'd wring your neck. But how could you do that when you all chained up? Drover. The boxer lifted one side of his mouth and unveiled a set of white teeth. I'd bust this chain. Looks pretty stout to me. Drover. It ain't stout enough. Just curious, said Drover. Big and Ugly went back to sleep, and I got them flies. One of them was big and green, also a little slow on the draw. I waited for my shot, and I snapped. Got the little booger, and then I had to spit him out real quick, because he tasted foul. It's not good, bad taste. Seemed to me I heard water running somewhere. I glanced around, and I saw Big and Ugly's head came up. He heard it too. Rover had just wiped the left rear tire and was going for the front one. Seemed to me poor judgment on Drover's part. The boxer sprang to his feet. Get away from that tire, runt. No two-bit Cowdog is going to mess up my tires. I didn't like the tone of his voice. I got up and I wandered to the side of the pickup. Say there, partner. Maybe I didn't hear you right. You weren't suggesting that there's any two-bit Cowdogs around here, were you? So here he is, walking around to the boxer, looking for trouble. What do you think he's going to say? Do you think he's going to help Drover? Or do you think he's going to try and get him out of the situation? What do you think the boxer's going to do? I don't know. Let's see. I ain't suggesting, buddy. I'm saying you are a couple of two-bit Cowdogs. Do you mean that as an insult or a compliment? Cowdog don't mean but one thing to me. Sorry, two-bit. Took a deep breath. Oh dear, Drover, the dust seems kind of bad all of a sudden. Why don't you go wet down that there other tire? He grinned, and he hiked up his leg, and he let it rip. The boxer went nuts when he saw that. All at once, his fangs were flashing in the sunlight. He lunged against his chain. He started barking, big, deep, roaring kind of barks, so loud you could feel it bouncing off your face. I waited for him to shush. You want to take back what you just said about Cowdogs? He lunged against the chain, lunges when you lunge forward, and slashed the air about 6 inches from the end of my nose. I guess not. I hopped down and I skipped right around the side of that boxer's pickup, and I wiped out the front and the back tires. Drover and I met in the front, and we swapped sides, gave each tire a second coat. Big and Ugly went berserk. He fought against the chains, and he roared, "Let me at him! I'll kill him! Just let me at him!" Rover and I finished the job and hopped back into the pickup bed. When the cafe door burst open, we went fast asleep. Slim, Loper, and the boxer's master stormed out. Are they really sleeping? No, they just don't want to get in trouble. What's going on out here, you dogs? It's my dog, Loper. He's making all the racket. Bruno, shush! You're disturbing the whole town. I sat up and I opened my eyes. Bruno was getting scolded from his master. He whined and he wagged his stumped tail, and he tried to explain what happened, but his master didn't understand. This seems to be a common trait among masters. Now, You lie down and you be quiet, and I don't want to hear another peep out of you, and you better know you better than that. The man went back inside. I waited a minute, and then I gave Drover the coast is clear sign. We got up, and we went over to the edge of the pickup. Bruno was lying flat, with his eyes open, and a couple of fangs showing beneath his lips. He was trembling with rage. Rover, you ever seen an uglier dog than this one? He giggled. Nah, I never did. Me neither. Can you imagine what his mother must have looked like? A growl came from deep in Bruno's throat. I don't like his pointed ears, said Drover. You know why they're pointed, don't you? When boxers are born, they have big floppy ears, and then a surgeon has to cut them off, then smash the face so they have a little brain. That's why they're so dumb. Their brain's smaller. By this time, the growl had become a steady roar. And that's why you never see boxers working cattle, just too frazzled and dumb to hold down a steady job. Bruno's eyes were cloudy, as if they were filled with smoke from a fire burning inside, and his teeth snapped together. Maybe he was crushing imaginary bones. Why would anybody want a dog that was so big and dumb and ugly? Said Rover. I've wondered about that myself, I said. And the only answer I can come up with is that maybe if a guy had a piece of long chain and he didn't know what to do with it, he'd buy a boxer and hang it on it. That did it. Bruno erupted, and again he lunged at us. I got a real good look at his nostrils, which appeared to be a little bit inflamed. I jerked my head at Drover, and we both were standing up a line of Z's when the cowboys came out again. Bruno, what in the world? Bad dog. Why can't you just lie still, like these other dogs? Bruno whimpered. Well, I guess I better go. Bruno's on a snort. See you later. And when the pickup drove off, me and Dover sat up and we grinned and we waved goodbye to our new friend. Bruno was so mad his eyes were crossed and foam was dripping off his chops. That's what makes being a cow dog worthwhile. Teamwork. That's that chapter. Now we're on chapter 5, another bloody murder. So this chapter is a real turning point in the story. It's a really good chapter, so enjoy. So here he is on the top of the chapter. I always draw Hank. When we crossed the cattle guard and put us back on the ranch, I felt a change come over me. In town, I had been just another happy-go-lucky dog without much care in the world. But back on the ranch, I felt that same crushing sense of responsibility that's known to people in high places, such as presidents, prime ministers, emperors, and such. Being head of ranch security is a great honor, but it's also a dreadful burden. I remember the chicken house murder. I still didn't have any suspects, or I had too many suspects. Maybe that was it. Everyone was a suspect. Well, everyone except the milk cow. I pretty much scratched her off my list. And the porcupine, since he only ate trees. But every other creature on the ranch was under the shadow of suspicion. Except Rover. He was too chicken to kill a chicken. When I got home, I trotted up to the chicken house and I went over the whole thing in my mind. While I was sitting there, lost in thought, a chicken came up and pecked me on the tail. Scared the fool out of me just for a second. I snarled at her and I made her squawk and flap her wings. That's another thing about this job. Every day, every night, you put your life on the line, and for what? A bunch of silly birds that would just as soon peck you on the tail as tell you good morning. Sometimes you wonder if it's worth it. And all that keeps you up is dedication to the duty. In the end, that's what separates the top of the Cowdogs from the common rabble, whatever the word is. Anyway, dogs that don't give a rip. That's what I'm saying. Well, I had nothing to work with, no evidence, no case, and there wasn't a thing I could do until the killer struck again. I could only hope that me and Rover could catch him in the act. I decided to change my strategy. Instead of throwing a guard round the chicken house, we would use the stakeout approach. Stakeout is a technical term which we use in this business. Webster defines it as a length of wood or metal pointed at one end for driving into the ground. Out is defined as away from, forth from, or removed from a place, position, or situation. It comes from the Middle English ut. That is about as technical as I can make it. In layman's terms, a stakeout is basically a trap. You leave the chicken house unguarded, and don't you see, and watch, and wait, and wait, and wait, and watch until the villain makes his move, and then you swoop in and you get him. It's pretty simple, really, when you get used to the terminology. At dark, me and Rover staked the place out. We hid in some tall weeds, maybe 30 feet from that chicken house. Time sure did drag. The first couple of hours, we heard coyotes howling off in the pastures. Rover kept looking round with big eyes. I thought he might try to slip off to the machine shed, but he didn't. After a while, he laid his head on his paws and he went to sleep. I could have kept him awake. Whole rang and demanded that he stay awake. But I thought, what the heck? This little guy is probably needing sleep. I figured I could keep watch and make him up when the time came for action. Then I fell asleep. But the funny thing about that was I dreamt I was awake. Sitting there, standing guard, I kept saying, Hank, are you awake? And Hank said, sure I am. If I were asleep, you and I wouldn't be talking like this, would we? And I said, no, I suppose not. It seems to me it's kind of a good waste of good sleep to dream about what you were doing when you were awake, but that is what happened. I heard something squawk. Said, Hank, what's that? Hank? Nothing. You sure? Sure, I'm sure. I'm wide awake and watching the stakeout, aren't you? I think so, yes. Then stop worrying. The squawking went on, and the next thing I knew, Rover was jumping up and down. Hank! Oh, Hank, he's back! Oh, the monster's back! Help! Help, blood! We need to fell asleep. Oh my gosh, Hank, wake up! Oh, I ain't asleep. And right then my eyes popped open and I woke up. Dang the luck, I was asleep. I was afraid of that. We dashed out of the weeds and found a body south of the chicken house door. The MO was the same. There's another technical term. MO stands for the modus operandi, which means how it was done. We shortened it to MO. A pattern began to emerge. The killer had struck twice, and both times he had killed a white leghorn hen. Actually, that might not have been a critical point because there weren't any other colored hens on the place. But I mention it to demonstrate the kind of deep thinking that goes on in solving a case of this type. You can't overlook a single detail, even those that don't mean anything. But the most revealing clue was that the murderer hadn't dragged his victim off, and that meant he hadn't killed it for food, but only for the sport of it. In other words, we had a pathological killer on the loose. This was very significant. The first big break in the case. At last, I had an MO that narrowed the suspects down to coyotes, coons, skunks, badgers, foxes, and rats. Hadn't eliminated anybody, and I was right back where I started. I hunkered down and I studied the body. So he's getting down close to the body to look at it, of the chicken. It was still warm, warm chicken. My mouth began to water, and I noticed a rumble in my stomach. This fresh evidence was pointing the case in an entirely new direction. What do you think that direction was? Can you guess? Oh, Drover, why don't you run along and get some sleep? You've had a tough day. Oh, I'm awake now. Oh, you look sleepy. I do? Oh, yes, you do. Awfully sleepy. Your eyes seem to be kind of baggy. Are you buying that story? Don't you think we ought to sound the alarm? Not just yet. I need to do a little more studying of the corpse. My stomach growled real loud. Rover perked up his ears. What's that? I didn't hear anything. He waited and he listened. I concentrated on making my stomach shush. You can do that, you control your body with your mind. Only it didn't work this time. My stomach growled again. Sounds like a rusty gate hinge. What is that? Rigor mortis, I said. Chickens, they do that. Run along now and get some sleep. We got a big day ahead of us. Well, okay. He started off and he heard my stomach again. He turned around and twisted his head and he stared at me. Was that you? Don't be absurd. Good night, Drover. He shrugged and he went off down to the gas tanks. I gave him plenty of time to bed down, get comfortable, snap at a few mosquitoes, and fall asleep. My mouth was watering so much that I was dripping off my chin. And when everything was real quiet, I snatched up the body and I locked out to the horse pasture and began my post-mortem investigation. It was very interesting. I didn't hurry this part of the investigation. I labored over my work for several hours and went into a peaceful sleep. Have you figured out yet what he's doing? Uh-oh. Okay, I'm not going to ruin it for you. You're going to find out. When I woke, it was bright daylight. Uh-oh. I could feel the rays of the sun warming on my coat. I glanced around, trying to remember where I was. And I figured it out. My heart almost stopped beating. I was lying in the center of a white feather circle. And several more feathers were clinging to my mouth and my nose. And my belly bulged. Uh-oh. And Sally Mae was standing over me with a look of horror on her face. Oh my goodness, here she is. Sally Mae. So he's eating this chicken. Oh no. But they don't know that it was already dead, right? Because the dogs were the only ones that found it and they didn't sound the alarm. Hank! You're the one? Oh, Hank, how could you? Huh? No, wait, there's been a mistake. You see, the chicken was already dead, and I thought, hey, listen, I can explain everything. It must have looked pretty bad. Me lying there in the midst of the damaging evidence. Sally Mae headed to the house, swinging her arms and walking mighty fast. I didn't know what to do. If I ran, it would look bad. If I stayed, it would look bad. What would you do? No matter what I did, it would look bad. Maybe eating the darn chicken had been a mistake. I was sitting there mulling over my next course of action when Sally Mae returned with her husband. There, look, you see who's been killing these chickens? Your dog. I whacked my tail against the ground and I put on my most innocent face. Loper and I had been through a lot together. Surely he would know that his head of ranch security wasn't a common chicken-killing dog. He had to trust me. But I could see his face harden, and I knew I was cooked. Hank, you bad dog. I never would have thought you'd do something like this. I didn't. It was all a mistake. I've been framed. Come here, Hank. I crawled over to him, and he picked up the chicken head, which was lying on the ground. I hadn't eaten it, because, with the beaks, they're hard to swallow. He tied a piece of string around the head and tied it around my neck. There, you wear that chicken head till it falls off. Maybe that'll help you remember that killing hens doesn't pay around here. They left, talking in low voices and shaking their heads. I tried to bite the string and get that thing off my neck, but I couldn't do it. I was feeling mighty low, mighty blue. I was ashamed of myself, but also outraged at the injustice of it. I headed down to the corral to find Rover. Instead, I ran into Pete, the barn cat, just the guy I didn't want to see. He was sunning himself in front of the cattle shed, in other words, loafing, which is what he does about 95% of the time. If you have a cat, they love to lay around, especially they can lay around in the window light, in the sun, and be lazy. I'm just saying loafing, he's just laying around, doing nothing. The mice were rampant down at the feed barn, but Pete couldn't work a mouse patrol into his busy schedule. It interfered with his loafing. That's a cat for you. He saw me before I saw him. He yawned and a big grin spread across his face. Nice necklace you got on, Hanky. Where could a feller buy one of those? You have to be in the mood for Pete, and I wasn't. I made a dive for him. He escaped instant death, and by a matter of inches. He hissed and he ran, and I fell right behind him. I chased him down the corrals. He hissed and I barked. There were several horses in the west lot. They all started bucking and kicking up their heels. But it was my lousy luck that Slim happened to be riding one of them, the 2-year-old colt, as I recall, and he started yelling, "Hank, out of here! Whoa, Sinbad, easy bronc!" Nobody round here ever yells at that cat. Why? I don't know. I don't understand. I gave up the chase. I would settle accounts with Pete some other day. I lopped over to the gas tank looking for Drover, and he heard me coming, sat up, saw the chicken head around my neck, turned tail, and sprinted for the machine shed as fast as he could go. "Drover, wait up, it's me, Hank!" He kept going. I guess he didn't want to get involved with a criminal. I went down to the gas tank and I lay down. Boy, I felt low. I tried to sleep, but I didn't have much luck. That chicken head was starting to smell, and it reminded me all over again of the injustice of my situation. Off in the distance, I could hear Pete. He was still up in that tree he had climbed to escape my attack. He was singing the song, "Mamas, don't let your puppies grow up to be cowdogs." Now and then, he would stop singing, and I would hear him laughing. Really got under my skin. I lay there brooding for a long time, and I pushed myself up. And all of a sudden, it was clear what I would have to do. They left me no choice. I took one last look at my bedroom there under the gas tank, and I started up the hill. And as I passed the machine door, Drover stuck his head out. "Psst, where you going?" Trotted past. "I'm leaving." He crept out and glanced to see if anybody was watching, and he came after me. "Leaving? That's right. I quit. I resign." His jaw dropped. "You can't do that." "Just watch me. This chicken head was the last straw. I'm fed up with this place, and I'm moving on." "Moving? Where are you going?" I don't know yet. I'm going west, towards the setting sun. He was quiet for a minute, and he said, I'll go with you. No, you won't. How come? Because, Drover, I'm starting a new life. I'm going to be an outlaw. Breath whistled out of his throat. An outlaw? That's right. They have driven me to it. Tied to the run. I tried to run this ranch, but it just didn't work. I'm going back to the wild. One of these days, they'll be sorry. But Hank, goodbye, Drover. Take care of things. I'm sorry it has to end this way. Next time we meet, I won't be Hank the Cowdog. I'll be Hank the Outlaw. So long. And with that, I trotted off to a new life as a criminal, as an outcast, a nomad, and a wild dog. All right, so those are our 2 chapters for today. Our next 2 chapters are the buzzards. Why would there be buzzards? I don't know. And true love. So we will see what happens when we get to the next 2 chapters and find out the direction Hank takes. And until then, I hope you have a wonderful day and keep reading.